Welcome to the South Bay FM video podcast. Join real estate broker Michael Dullea and Jeff Bettger as they take you on a tour of one of San Diego's most vibrant communities, the South Bay. Michael and Jeff delve into the local real estate market and explore topics that matter to current residents, buyers, and sellers. Whether you're a longtime resident or considering a move to the area, this video podcast is your go-to source for all things South Bay. So sit back, relax, and let's shine a light on this amazing community.
Hannah's mom, Lindsay, located Saved in America, and then from that point on, we just started working side by side with them. The driving force was honestly Lindsay, who's Hannah's mother. She was the one that introduced us to them, and then from that point on, Frank and I started speaking with each other, and the communication was natural, and we just continued to work with each other.
Welcome to another episode of South Bay FM. This is Mike Dullea, your host, and I'm here with Jeff Bettger, the co-host.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
We're doing good. We have an incredible group of heroes here tonight with us. Their group, Saved in America, has done some unbelievable, wonderful things. It's a sad story, but as Mr. Travers has mentioned, it's actually an amazing story when we get them back. And this is a story about people that have been trafficked and saved. And I'd like to turn it over to Joseph Travers. And we're also here with Lisa Cohen, who has brought us, that we've known for many, many years and actually helped connect us all tonight. So thank you, Lisa.
My pleasure.
And Joseph, can you tell us a little bit about Saved in America?
Yes. Excuse me. Saved in America is a nonprofit organization based out of San Diego County. Originally, it was Oceanside County because I was a police fire commissioner in Oceanside 13 years. So that's where it initiated. But then now we're based out of Palma Valley, California. You know, the beautiful acreages and the farms and the countryside. So I'm learning how to do that. from on the sand and going out surfing, out to, the wilderness.
Now the farming.
And watching the coyotes, do their thing and all that. So anyway, but it's a lot of fun. So anyway, back in about 2009, I read an article about a young girl named Brittany Drexel. And Brittany went missing from upstate New York, and nobody knew what happened to her. And I come out, I was born and raised in Carson, California. I watched the beginning of the Crips and the Bloods and that whole thing on the border of Compton. And I understand gangs very well. And when I got out of the United States Navy, I went into law enforcement. Went to the LA County Sheriff's Academy in 1980 and then stayed in law enforcement in the 80s. And I worked and saw the progression of narcotics trafficking and the street gang involvement, eventually with then the prison gangs and the cartels, and saw how they took over this narcotics trafficking trade from the late 80s to the 90s to now, where in this country, they all have their routes, and you can't sell drugs unless you have permission from them for distribution, because if you don't, your life is in danger, basically. It's not like, I don't know how old you are, I'm 65, so, back in the 60s and 70s, you can get in your mini microbus, VW, and go surfing down to San Diego, buy, a key of dope, right? Sell some nickel bags and pay for it and go on surfing safari, right? Doesn't work that way anymore. Can't do that. So this triad, I call the evil triad, took over this narcotics trafficking. And then around 2008, they decided to take over child sex trafficking and use the same routes that they've already established. So for example, and let me clarify this for you. So San Diego is the number 2 child sex trafficking area in the country.
What's number 1?
Texas.
Texas.
Florida's number 3. Well, then go and look and do your study. And our studies in the back of the book from our own Dr. Amy Carpenter, University of San Diego, wrote the study that talks about child sex trafficking and the involvement with street gangs and other organized crime elements. So what happens is that why is San Diego number 2?
I'd heard something recently where we were number one, so I didn't. I mean, it's horrible. I didn't even know until 10 years ago that we even had sex trafficking in the United States, and so it shocked me to hear that in the first place. But please,
and even if it's number one, what is it? Because there's more perverted men in San Diego? No, has nothing to do with it. It's because the drug routes with organized crime cartels, prison gangs, and street gangs already have that avenue set. So, and I can tell you about some true stories later. You just tell me to remember, but HBO Vice went out with us on an operation, and we took a 14-year-old girl under the influence of heroin from a cartel house here in San Diego who was being sold to another gang faction in Las Vegas. And we got her right before they were able to move her. But they recruited her out of Utah and brought her down here for distribution. So you see how that works. It's all these routes. In Texas, of course, is number one in drug trafficking. In Florida is number 3.
Is there an estimate of how many people are being trafficked right now?
Yes. There's, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, there's 300,000 runaway or missing kids in this country. Now, according to the study I just talked about with Dr. Amy Carpenter, she proved what we already knew through our operations is between 33 and 40% of all the children, the young girls, the runaways missing are being trafficked. So as we speak, there's 100,000, not foreign children, American children being trafficked in this country.
How many again?
100,000.
Oh my God.
And that's American. Now, we got to know Mark Morgan, the former Border Patrol commissioner for both ICE and the Border Patrol. And we were talking, and he has spoken for us at our event in San Diego that we had last time, and again in Las Vegas, Nevada, that there's an underbelly of trafficked children that could be twice as high as that foreign children, because if you're from a family in Ecuador, or you're from family in Honduras or Guatemala or wherever the case may be, and the cartels control the border.
So of course, some of the people that are coming across right now, they would be missing.
They would, they get, they look at the girl. So let's say there's a 13-year-old girl they decide they want. Okay, so who paid them for the 13-year-old girl to go over the border in the first place? That's the coyotes who work for the cartels. So if the 13-year-old goes missing, who are the parents going to call? If they call the police and work with the police, what do you think is going to happen to them and their family and where they originally hired the coyote? It's very dangerous. It leads to all kinds of bad things. And you wonder why, when you look at some of these border towns, all these beheadings and killings and murders, and the cartels, they own everything. So this is a problem of not just 100,000 American kids, but maybe 200,000, 300,000 children in this country being sold in modern day slavery in 2023.
Which is higher than any point in our history of slavery, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, absolutely. And so what happened, I read this about Brittany, going back to the history. So at the time, and I'm a pastor, so I've had a ministry, a homeless ministry, and a jail ministry, and some others. And, one in Camp Pendleton, which I still do today. And then I have another one for the Frogmen, of course, here in Coronado. But I saw this, I thought, it just clicks. Here I have this investigative, both public and private, I've been a licensed private investigator for 40 years, and police officer in South Central East LA. And then I read an article about United States Navy SEALs going overseas and rescuing children from other countries. So I got a hold of these guys. I said, do you understand what's going on in this country? And they had no idea. So I got a hold of Master Chief Kirby Harrell. I don't know if you know about Kirby. Greatest guy in the world. You guys, that's a guy you need on your show.
Okay.
The last retired SEAL from Vietnam.
Wow.
I mean, Kirby is a legend on the teams. So Kirby said, I'm here, let's do it. So that's how we devised this plan, and it took a lot of time. From the concept of 2009, we didn't do our first operation until December 2014.
Okay. And I'm assuming when you did that, nerves aplenty, but how'd it go? Talk about that first operation and how, obviously, I'm assuming it went successfully.
Yes, it actually, of the cases that we've taken, we have unbelievably, and I can only say because I don't find the kids. God tells me where they are. He says, Joseph, go this way, that way, that way, and that way. Now, I'm not taking away experience. I'm not taking away education. I'm not taking away any of that. I'm just saying because as a pastor, God equips me and he gives me these talents, and then he says, this is what I want you to do. And then I, okay, it's just a matter of obedience from that point in time. But so it was a 14-year-old girl in Oceanside, California, and we found out later she was trafficked since age of 11. And we ended up working that case and then got her to a rehab. And then she's been in and out. A lot of these girls, they go missing more than once because they want the opiate. You see, and you know what happens. I mean, we're talking fentanyl, right? Which is heroin on steroids.
Right.
And heroin as an opiate is bad enough. How many people, you can ask this. I mean, I talk about how you manipulate these girls, right? So one of the questions I ask an audience is, who wants to go back to junior high school? Zero. And that's when they manipulate these kids because they're going through all these changes, hormonal, everything, mental. I mean, everything's changing around that time. But have you ever met a reformed heroin addict that has stayed reformed?
I personally haven't, but I don't know how it works. So.
I've been in the business working, like I said, where I used to work and working with narcotics and gangs and all that. I can't, as I'm speaking to you, I can't remember one. I just can't because it's so hard for them. You know, they have to take the, what's that other drug they end up taking?
Well, there was Oxy for a while, the OxyContin, which
I mean,
was
the one they subscribe to a heroin addict so they don't go back to the heroin. I can't remember right now.
Yeah.
To help them out so they don't go to the opiate.
Yes. Methadone,
yes. So you need all these other things. So can you imagine getting a young girl like the 14-year-old we were talking about that was enticed through social media to leave her home and her family and friends in Utah to come down here? We had to get out of the house under the influence of heroin. So when you inject into a 14-year-old mind these highly addictive opiates, all the child wants is the opiate, then the predator trafficker has them because they'll do anything for the opiate.
I wondered how someone is enticed to leave. It to me, it doesn't even make sense that someone would leave, but I didn't grow up in a household like that. I grew up in a traditional middle-class family where we had our values and we all got along, but we all fought, that kind of thing. And so trying to understand why a person would leave and go down that path, it's the drugs. And I didn't realize that. But
yeah, they eventually get to the drugs. Here's a case, a 15-year-old girl in Del Mar. Mom's an attorney. Okay, would you think that she's going to get trafficked?
Not at all.
No, not at all. So she ended up meeting somebody who was a trafficker from East LA, and he came down and met her on the beach, and then they started a private conversation on social media, and he's going to do all this and that, and then found out that she came from a broken home and moved right in on that issue, right? And then what they do is they use, and anyone here can go on our website, savedinamerica.org, go to resources, and you'll see we have up there an acronym called GROOM, GROOM, and it tells the steps on how they groom these girls. And that's what they do. They use psychological coercion. They groom them to where they want to leave their safe space because they coerce them to think their safe space isn't safe. My space is better than your space.
It's amazing. You always hear about the criminal, right? If they just use their minds for good, right? If they took that same energy of transferring them into something that is horrible in life, if they used it to help them achieve better, or what the world would look like. Unreal, that psychology that they're using on these poor children.
Yeah, exactly. And what they do is it's sort of like my dad used to tell me, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they've been doing the same thing throughout world history over and over and over again for of course, the love of money. It's all about the money. And when you look at the groom, that's the last one, the M, it's money. People aren't people anymore. They're a tool or a product for them to get their money so they can, whatever they think they love the money for.
Greed.
Greed and other things. But of course, now does it work in the long run? Absolutely not. And then we can talk about prison gangs and all that and how they manipulate the street gang members, with of course the love of money and back to the cartels. And it's just it's really a horrible, wicked, circle.
So are the cartels both in the United States and Mexico, and that's how it's and the channels, do they lead outside of the United States, or is all of that basically right here, just here in the United States, and it really doesn't get pushed back out?
Yeah, the cartels go out internationally, but here in the United States, they make a lot of money here, obviously, because we're a very wealthy country. And they have this organization, and I'll just let you know kind of how it works, is that so the street gangs are now getting all the product. They are the distributors for the cartels. I don't care which one. There's some main ones, right? You have your Crips and your Bloods, and you have your MS-13 and your 18th Street and all the different ones that come, leave from that.
Right.
And then you have your white supremacists and different names, Nazi lowriders or whatever you want to call them. They're all street gangs, right? And then you even have your biker gangs, right? So your outlaw gangs. They're all in the drug trafficking trade, but they all get their drugs from the cartel. That's where they get their product. So what happens in the early 90s, around the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, the war on drugs, remember Ronald Reagan declared war on drugs in the 80s. Well, eventually, now with the hard work of the DEA and the other federal agencies that worked that, they started prosecuting these cartel members and then started to extradite them. Now you have these cartel leaders who are going to end up in a federal prison. Well, just like the cartels run the border, we might have the Border Patrol there, but who runs it? The cartels. Who runs our prisons?
The cartels.
Well, no, the prison gangs.
Okay.
And the prison gangs are broken up again. You got your Mexican Mafia, La Nostra Familia, your Black Guerrilla Family, and your Aryan Brotherhood. Separated in races, and they have different names now, but it's from the same families, right? So what they decided is the street gang members that come to prison, if you haven't been paying us our taxes, they collect taxes too, just like us. And you get to prison, which they do get to prison because our law enforcement in this country is still very good. And eventually when they get there, if they haven't been paying their money, they kill them. Now, what's the entrance exam to be a prison gang member? Heroin addict and a murderer. You have to kill somebody who the prison gang says to get rid of, who usually is a gang member that didn't pay their taxes once they get into prison.
Wow.
Really, and then what does the cartels get to deal with the prison gangs? Well, when, again, these cartel leaders who are now going to American prisons, they want to be protected. The prison gangs own it, and they say, okay, well, give us your balance sheets so we know how much taxes to get from the distributors, and we'll take care of you when you get in federal prison.
Wow. It's unreal.
So we see a huge problem. I think our audience will be interested to know more about your organization and what you're doing to help solve it. And I'd like to introduce for a moment Lisa Cohen, who Mike and I have known for a long time. so well respected
Thank you.
as
Ditto.
the CEO of the Chula Vista Chamber of Commerce, and did such a wonderful job there. And now you're the executive director. And you guys were very smart to pick her because she's excellent.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about your position in the organization, and that'd be great.
I think it started with a text message. They got my information from Kirby Horrell, who I've known for like over 25 years. And I was in as soon as I met with Joseph. We had a long conversation on the phone, then we met in person. And it was started for to help with their event coming up. We have a big event coming up in December, on December 14th at the Pendry Hotel.
And that's a fundraising event, I believe, right?
Our annual fundraising event, and also thanking all of our sponsors that make the operations possible. So it was first started to help with events and fundraising, and then Joseph asked me, "Can you be the executive director?" So we're like two peas in a pod.
You did well, Joseph.
Well, the work they're doing it's God's work. You know, it's no longer looking at different areas. It's good and evil, and children are just precious, and that's their focus. It's runaways, and it's also children that have been trafficked, and bringing them home and finding the resources to get them on the right path, because unfortunately they've been lured. And like Joseph was talking about, a lot of the reason the human part is so much, it could be sold over and over again. When you sell a drug and a drug is taken, the drug is gone. And unfortunately, these poor children are being trafficked over and over again. So it's just horrific items. It's a part that you don't want to look at. There's a great movie out called The Sound of Freedom, and it's hard to watch, but it's a must-see. And it really showcases what goes on. And at the very end, you need to stay and listen. It takes about 3 minutes to what it took for them to put it on the big screen and all the steps they had to go through, because it was not supported to do that. And it's really opening up a lot of people's eyes, like your eyes were open 10 years ago.
Right.
So it's hard to think about. You know, when you have children, you have grandchildren, you don't even want to think this goes on in the world.
Yeah.
But the world is changing, and we're at the information age, and it is critical to have the good guys there that are doing the right thing for society, and especially for children. And I think the main part of the movie is God's children are not for sale. And
Right.
that's kind of how we look at it also the same way. So they've been doing their operations since 2014. 275 have already been saved, brought home.
That's amazing. So almost 30 a year.
Yeah, and that's really not much compared to what we were just talking about. If you got
Right.
200,000, but that's not the idea. If it's just one,
Yeah.
If we would have found just one, that's a life. That's changing a life.
Yeah.
That changes other lives, and
Their families get their lives back.
exactly. And what Lisa was talking about, we don't just help with the recovery of the children, because we do this. By the way, your audience needs to know this. If you know of someone with a runaway child under 18, call us for free. We'll go find your child.
That is very important. I
yeah.
actually met I know a person that I won't bring their name up, but their grandchild actually ran away, and thank God, about 4 or 5 days later, they did find that child. But that would have been amazing to have your phone number to do that. So
If someone's child does run away and they get in contact with you, what kind of information do you require? What would be kind of the normal process after that? You come interview the parents, or how does that work?
Yeah, all the above. We have a 4-step process where you go savedinamerica.org, tab Need Our Help. Go up there. There's 2 applications. There's a limited power of attorney, so we can, because children have confidential rights in California, so you have to have a limited power of attorney so we can talk to police agencies or whoever, a public agency, about the child. And then we ask that they report the child to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and have a police report. Once we have all that, I personally talk to whoever the parent is or the guardian, and then I turn that over to Sharm, who's our parent coordinator. And what she does, she's an MFCC. So she takes over.
what is an MFCC? I'm sorry.
Marriage, family, child counselor,
Okay,
certified
okay,
by the
thank you.
state. And she takes over and takes the family through the process, and it walks them through continually. So once we get to that stage, then we have a law enforcement liaison who's a peace officer to talk to law enforcement, because no one talks better to a cop than a cop. I mean,
Right.
that's just the way it is. And we have standards. It's on our website under resources, is how we work with law enforcement. And one of the big things is we don't ask for anything from them. We want to give it to them. And we're all trained investigators, and we keep everything in a file that's collected for evidence for both civil filings later. We even got a $500,000 judgment against one predator. So we can do civil filings
great.
and then give it to whether it's state or federal law enforcement for prosecution. And one of the cases with bad guys in prison 9 years in Nevada, and that was a young girl, 14-year-old from Sparks, Nevada, who we found in Mexico, and then worked together with the Marshals Department and the federal police in Mexico, got her back, and now he's in prison. So anyway, they go and they fill this out. She'll stay with them, have a law enforcement liaison do what he does, and we give it to our social networking and our OSINT intelligence team. And then we go through a complicated series of investigations through open source intelligence. And then once we get a workable lead, then we have we call our former cops and our SEALs, who are all licensed insured investigators. Right. They go out to confirm the lead. And once the lead's confirmed, and then we do surveillance and stakeout, we give all the information to law enforcement. So in all these cases, we've never touched anyone. Now, does that mean that we couldn't? No, we just would rather give it to law enforcement, have them get the girl, get her, reunite her with her parent, and if one of the bad guys is there to get arrested, we have them do it. And then we just work as intelligence gatherers and help them with their investigation.
You mentioned earlier, and I also, I agree with the statement, but you mentioned earlier that we have amazing law enforcement. But when you talk about, and this might be our last question for you before we actually switch it over to Jeff and Lisa talking about maybe how to fundraise and get involved here. But why is it, and this will segue into that, but what is it that makes your organization so much more successful in finding children than maybe the police does? And what is the difference? Meaning, why would a person just not call the police versus reaching out to you specifically to help that process?
Yeah, we make sure they all reach out to the police. If they haven't, they have to. We won't start their case without a police report. We just won't do it, because the police are the number one place you need to go. The problem is resources, especially with this defund police movement. They just don't have the resources to look for runaway kids. Now, what happens is a girl runs away. So if you don't mind, if a couple minutes on a true story.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, okay, this is the 14-year-old I told you about up in Sparks, Nevada. We got in Mexico. Mm-hmm. She was manipulated online with social networking by an 18th Street gang member down here. He got her to finally agree to run away. Okay, now he's 27. So she, mom comes to take her to school. The window's open and her daughter's gone. Where is she? She has no idea, because the answers are in here. So the police department goes and takes a report, puts the child in the National Crime Information Index. So if someone runs across her, but they don't have the resources to go actually investigate, to go look. So that's where we come in. We try to fill that gap in between for runaways, because as the study, now remember, a runaway, 40% of all runaways end up where? Being trafficked. So we look at a runaway as like a high priority. That's way too high. 40% chance of.
That's.
I have 4 sisters, and come on. That's just the odds are just.
It's almost it's close to half. I mean, if 2 people run away, one of them's going to.
One of them's being trafficked. So you need to go look at all the runaways, but they don't have the money, and I don't mind saying this. So city council members, county board of supervisors, state legislators, federal, you need to budget your police departments to go after runaways. Yeah. Okay, that's what the problem is. It's not the police's fault.
Does it become complicated that, if the girl's from Utah, but you're not even sure where she's at, and maybe she's in San Diego. Doesn't that get complicated as to which police department would be in charge of following that up? And that's where you kind of help because you aren't based in just one jurisdiction.
Correct. We would go all over the country.
Okay.
We don't go outside the country because that's Operation Underground Railroad's job. That's what they do. They do trafficking.
So there's another group that helps.
Yeah, and that's the Sound of Freedom. That's what we're talking about, the movie with Jim Caviezel, with Tim Ballard.
I have not seen the movie yet.
Yeah,
but
former Homeland Security agent. Great organization, wonderful. I could vouch for them. I know for sure they do what they say they do. They've recovered children all over the world, but they don't do recovery here. And that's what we do.
That's where you join.
That's where we come
So
in.
you're in many ways your sister organizations to one another.
Correct. And anybody calls and says they have children outside of the country, that's who I refer them to.
Gotcha.
As Operation Underground Railroad. So great.
How do you get involved? So if a child gets taken, most likely taken, let's say someone runs away, they file the reports, they do the things, they call you, and the investigation leads to they're not around, that they were taken. How do you find out that they ended up, because I'm assuming some Americans end up outside of the United States, just as obviously we were talking about the other way around where people from other countries end up here in the United States. So how do they follow up with that? Or how do you guys trade information to get that?
Well, we don't. We've recovered 5 American children that were taken from here in Mexico. So we just go.
You go wherever.
We go wherever.
Oh, so it doesn't matter if they're American.
If they're American, yeah.
Gotcha.
Right. And then the foreign girls we give to OUR because that's their specialty.
Gotcha.
And that's a different way to investigate too. I mean, you got to think about it. Here in this country, we're just so privileged. We just don't even realize it. And I've been around the world. I mean, I know bad guys here have constitutional rights. Predators do.
Right.
Right? Child traffickers do. You know, thank God for this new law, SB 14, with Senator Shannon Grove and our State Senator Brian Jones for trying to make that a strike to sell children.
Yeah.
Now is what that's all about. So, and actually we're going to give our award, right? Our Child Saved Not Sold annual award. Brian won it a couple years ago, I think, for the other great things he's done. And then now he gets to give the baton to Shannon. So
it's wonderful.
Yeah. So back to the girls and what happens. So after we get them, then we help them with the rehabilitation because now they need.
So you don't stop once you got them.
No. And then once we get through the rehabilitation, now we give them scholarships to go to college or vocational school. And at this fundraiser we're talking about, hopefully December 14th, we're just waiting for that last word from our couple special guests. Some great, if you like Mark Morgan, you're going to love our next special guest even more. Oh. So anyway, we present their case and then give them a scholarship. So and this one young girl that we helped in Santa Barbara County, she wants to go into the medical field. She's in college now, and this is how far she went from being gone and missing 5 years ago now. So.
Wow.
Awesome. Can we talk about how can people donate and how can people become involved? I understand there's options of being more than just a donator.
Yeah, so on our website, we have for donations, takes you right to the page. You can be a monthly donator, get a lump sum, whatever is best for you. Then also we're asking for all people interested in working with us to go on and sign up for our emails so that we get all the information. That way we have you in our database. And then there's a whole section for volunteers. They have to have a background check. There's paperwork for them to fill out, and we'll take them through step by step of what's needed. But, we can't have anyone that's come in that has felonies, priors, for pedophilia. That we have to be very careful about who. It's just such sensitive information, and they're so vulnerable, these children. So we have to make sure all those steps are followed. Our big event's coming up on December 14th at the Pendry Hotel, downtown San Diego, 5:30 to 8. And we're just finalizing the keynote speakers right now. And so that will be up on our website hopefully by Monday. And we're really excited to have people that want to sponsor. And we also have legacy sponsors that can be involved for operations. So you can donate and put your money right where it's going to be most influential. You have some parents that just don't have the funds. And, 1 hour without your child is horrific. And then when you're talking 4 days with not knowing anything, we want to step in. The sooner that we can be involved, get the information. We ask the parents don't delete any of their social media accounts, don't delete their cell phones, keep everything live, and then we go from there.
What kind of activities could a volunteer help with?
I'll send that over to Joseph.
Yeah, we have 4 levels. We have the funding part, the 4th level, but the 3 levels we have is one we've had for a long time. We have 300 reserves right now who are licensed private investigators, local, state, and federal law enforcement people across the country, 300. So that's our boots on the ground, so we don't have to spend so much money in travel and go. So we can call them, they're the boots on the ground, and go out there and do the workable intel and get the girl with whoever the law enforcement agency is. And then that's you have to be, like I said, a licensed investigator or a current or retired peace officer for that level. The next level we have is we call that certified missing exploited child investigator. They get a designate. They have to study the textbook you have. Then they have to get 90% on the test. So they have to know what they're doing in this arena. Then we have another one, certified missing exploited child investigator, and that comes from a law that Governor Abbott in Texas signed. There's a international pastors group that worked with the state of Texas and to get chaplains in the public schools because of all these problems in public schools and the school shootings and this and that. So Governor Abbott passed a law that now public school districts can hire chaplains to be counselors, and the chaplains organization reached out to us to train them on child sex trafficking while they're in the public schools. And we're thinking about doing that now in different states. We're working with a couple other states, and then we'd love to do it in all 50 because it needs to be done. So that's the second level. Then the third level is certified missing and exploited child volunteer, where everybody else, there's things to do. And as long as you pass the background and some basic study, and still you got to read the book, you got to know what you're doing, you got to pass the test, you got to get certified, then you can help. And the number one way is someone to be a certified missing and exploited child volunteer to go to city council meetings, go to the Rotaries, go to the Seroptimists.
I was just going to say Rotary and Knights of Columbus, for that matter. I could see both of those organizations getting very involved in assisting you.
Correct. And get the word out. This is what the problem is, and this is how to solve it, and this is what we need. And to say, just like I said earlier, get the police more involved, and the way to get the police more involved is get the legislators to understand you have to fund it. You should have...
Would that be local government, like the mayor and the city council, or would that be county government?
Well, you would have the mayors of cities fund the local police departments. Like I was on the Police Fire Commission in Oceanside 13 years. So that's run by the city council, what the police department gets. And they're very generous with their police department because they love their police department. They want them to help. Actually, we've had a few cases in Oceanside where we've worked very well with the police department there. But then you have the county board of supervisors who has the purse strings for the sheriff's department.
Right.
So they have to budget for runaways and missing kids, and then et cetera, the state police, and then of course you have the federal police. So you need the people who write the laws and who govern us to understand where to appropriate the funds. And this, I think, and I'm sure your whole audience would agree, yeah, we need to appropriate funds for this. What
does it cost to save a life, to bring somebody back? What's the traditional cost, or it's so varied, or is there a cost that you could associate to?
No, there's some study. I think we're right about anywhere from 15 to 20,000 per child recovery. But there's a lot of things that go into that, insurances, and all that, everything that goes with it. But the county task force, their cost, and that's only personnel costs, not equipment. Our cost is everything in.
Right.
their cost for personnel is $65,000
Wow.
per child. And that's not counting equipment or anything like
and
that.
that's why it gets swept under the rug too often.
It's costly. It's really costly. Now, we call ourselves, like, again, the GAP. We are all fully insured, licensed private investigators in the state of California with weapons permits and everything. Okay, with insurances to cover it. We never have to use the weapons. Thank God. We never had to touch anyone. Thank God. But obviously, Navy SEALs and cops, we know what to do if we had to. But we just don't put ourselves in that situation. So what we fill that gap, but a parent to do the same thing we do would probably have to pay $20,000-$30,000 to a licensed PI to go do it for them. And who has that sitting around in their bank account nowadays? I mean, what are the studies? What does the average person have for expendable income?
Well, I remember hearing what's her Kamala Harris just say everyone has $300 left.
There you go, $300. You know, how much is a PI in San Diego County? Anywhere from $95 to $125 an hour. So what does that get you? A call on the telephone. I mean, unfortunately, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Wow. That's unreal. And so that leads back to direct donations, that fundraisers where people could have fun and be able to see maybe some of the highlights of what you've done. This fundraiser, December 14th.
Yeah, December 14th, and we have different levels of sponsorships. And then they can also just donate directly on the website. But it's really important because there's no cost to the parents. We want to keep it that way. We want to make sure that we bring the children home is the main focus. One thing that Joseph had touched on is Senate Bill 14. That's going before committee tomorrow. The Senate bill came forward last year. It was 1042, and that died on the floor. So we're really hoping that you
cross our fingers.
Yeah.
Can you explain what it is real quick?
So it gives a strike, a felony strike for California for trafficking a minor.
Got it.
But they had to take out adult. It could only be for minors, and that's what we focus on. So this is by State Senator Shannon Grove, and it's co-authored with other, there's 4 other senators. But it's really important that we start watching what's going through legislation, and it's almost horrific at times when these items are not being approved, where we think it's a slam dunk. You shouldn't even be questioning it. But unfortunately, I think it gets back to the ballot box when you're voting too. Really look at what who you're voting for and what they stand for, and make sure it's family values.
Well, us here at South Bay FM and our listeners are going to be watching who votes for what tomorrow. So, or it won't be aired by tomorrow. So we'll see hopefully who voted for what. So
that's correct. So please go to our website, savedinamerica.org. All the information is there. My phone number is in there, email address. Reach out to me, Lisa Cohen, Executive Director. Anything I can do to help, to guide anyone. But we're really there as a resource and bringing home children.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you both.
You're doing God's work, and God bless you, and hope your organization continues to thrive. And I hope it ends in some ways. I hope your organization will eventually end because it does such a wonderful job. But
that's what Master Chief Kirby Harrell says, our famous SEAL. He says, I wish we didn't have to exist.
Yeah. It's almost the way I feel, but at the same time, because you are here and you are doing this, God bless you, and hopefully you bring home a lot of people.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bless you.
And even just the education of knowing, I think that's very preventative as well, right? So that people realize this is a real problem and this is how these children get sucked into this, that hopefully it gets stopped from the home. You don't want it to be all the way finding them 3 years later. If you can stop it at the beginning, that education component is so important.
Yes, and like I said, go on the website, go to our media page. We've been over 300 media from NBC Nightly News, HBO Vice, Fox News, you name it, we've been on it. I mean, all over the country, Breitbart, OAN, whatever. And you're also going to find videos from parents talking about what happened. You're going to find videos from the children themselves talking about what happened. Wow. And like I said, the grooming process, the rescue process, and everything in between. It's all on the website. It's all on the
Beautiful.
media page. Get on there, start looking at it, going through it, get educated. The textbook we wrote, it's in its 4th edition, Investigation of Missing and Exploited Children, The Gateway to Child Sex Trafficking. All funds go back to the operations. Get that book. It's the first textbook of its kind on investigation of missing children. And it'll tell you, like I said, it'll run down how this whole works. And there's 5 true stories in there in the middle of the chapter.
Wow.
Goes through our process. Of course, the children's names are changed, so you can't go back and re-victimize them again.
Right.
But it really tells a story of what happened, how they got enticed, where they were, what happened to them, and how they got recovered, and how they went to rehab and everything. So
Beautiful.
I kind of wish, the one thing as I was hearing it tonight, I kind of wish you were touching them, the bad guys.
hey, so do a lot of our team members.
That's the one comment I have to say. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Our pleasure.
Sir,
Thank you.
Lisa, thank you.
Thank you.